This is week 177 of Russia's full-scale invasion of Ukraine. I'm Anna Belokur, reporting to you from Kyiv, and I'll be taking you through the top stories from Ukraine this week. This week kicked off with a much-anticipated declaration by U.S. President Donald Trump, who said at the end of last week that he had a big announcement in the works regarding Russia. Appearing alongside NATO chief Mark Rutte on Monday, Trump claimed that he had given Russian President Vladimir Putin an ultimatum to reach a peace deal within 50 days or face 100% secondary tariffs. He also announced a new wave of U.S. weapons for Ukraine, including Patriot missile systems, paid for by NATO and European allies. On the one hand, Trump taking a harsher stance on Russia and switching his rhetoric to a more pro-Ukraine tilt is a good thing. On the other hand, I think I've heard this song before. Trump said that he would end the war within 24 hours of resuming office and then 100 days of resuming office, and these deadlines have come and gone with little fanfare, as Russia definitively continues its war against Ukraine. Peace talks have stalled. Russia has refused a full ceasefire and immediately broken the partial one it agreed to, and with the exception of some small cooperative wins like prisoner exchanges, no meaningful progress has been made towards ending the war since Trump's inauguration. On the contrary, as I say week after week, things here on the ground have only been escalating. Whether Trump's new deadline will prove effective at pressuring Russia into peace negotiations is debatable. Sources close to the Russian president said Putin appeared largely unmoved by Trump's threats, and Trump himself acknowledged that he has low expectations for Putin's compliance. During a July 3rd conversation between the two, Putin apparently told Trump that he intends to continue waging war until Russia has secured the entirety of the Ukrainian regions it partially occupies, with Trump telling French President Emmanuel Macron afterwards that Putin wants to take all of it. On Monday, Trump admitted that he was disappointed in Putin, but said he's not done trying to reach an agreement, which is less confidence than anyone would like to hear in this situation. Experts are dubious on whether Trump's secondary tariff threats really carry much weight. In the scenario that Trump is proposing, countries that continue doing business with Russia would be penalized, meaning that, for example, Chinese exports to America would be massively taxed as a consequence of China continuing to buy Russian oil. So in practice, this means that the price of Chinese products would massively rise for Americans, and China would subsequently lose money. But you can see how that might not be a huge win for Trump's popularity at home. One Russian economist told the Kyiv Independent that actual enforcement of secondary tariffs would put Trump at risk of falling out with multiple powerful economies at once, and that even if the will was there, tracking every country's trade with Russia would be nearly impossible. While no one wants to see America crack down on Russia more than Ukraine, the general consensus here is that this new ultimatum won't be the thing that convinces Russia that it has no choice but to end its war. On the contrary, this window may give Russia tacit permission to push ahead for 50 days without fear of swift retribution from America, with Ukrainian authorities saying that upwards of 160,000 Russian troops are currently amassing along the eastern front lines, in what many fear will be a heightened summer offensive that could see devastating loss of land for Ukraine. KI Insights, the analytical branch of the Kyiv Independent, is having an exclusive online briefing next Thursday, July 24th. The topic is Ukraine's drone industry, a 10,000-foot view. This event will include exclusive insights from the newly launched Ukrainian defense tech catalog, Warcrafted, the power behind Ukrainian defense tech, a first-of-its-kind publication co-produced by KI Insights and TechForce in UA. You can scan this QR code to register. Access details will be sent via email after registration. Ukraine's government underwent a major reshuffle this week, the largest since the start of the full-scale invasion. In Ukraine's semi-presidential system, the president nominates the prime minister, defense minister, and foreign minister, Parliament then approves them, and then the Prime Minister is responsible for further ministerial candidates, who also must be approved by Parliament. The former Prime Minister of more than 5 years, Denis Shmyhal, submitted his resignation on Tuesday, effectively tendering the resignation of the entire previous government. First Deputy Prime Minister and Economy Minister Yulia Svyrydenko, one of the key players in the minerals deal between the US and Ukraine this year, was confirmed as the new Prime Minister 2 days later, on Thursday. Svyrydenko's former role as First Deputy Prime Minister will be filled by Mikhailo Fedorov, who has been serving as Deputy Prime Minister and Digital Transformation Minister. Former Prime Minister Shmyhal was approved as the next Defense Minister. Ukraine also appointed Deputy Prime Minister Olha Stefanishyna as its new special envoy to the US, with the understanding that this is a temporary role until she can be approved as the new ambassador to the US. Obviously, this is a huge moment in US-Ukrainian relations, so this role comes with hefty responsibility. Zelensky had previously said that he was considering Defense Minister Rustem Umerov for the role, but Umerov is now slated to lead the National Security Council. Deputy Economy Minister Taras Kachka will take over Stefanishyna's role as Deputy Prime Minister for the EU and NATO. The fact that this reshuffle is largely replacing top officials with other top officials hasn't gone unnoticed by the Ukrainian meme community, prompting creations like this. Other key figures will remain in their roles, including Foreign Minister Andriy Sybiha, Interior Minister Ihor Klimenko, and Finance Minister Serhiy Marchenko. These appointments reflect Zelensky's desire to shake up strategy surrounding defense industrial development and new bilateral relations with allies, while retaining a loyal team around him, while also providing an opportunity to shed people who have become problematic, like Deputy Prime Minister Alexei Chernyshov. You might remember him from a few weeks ago, when I discussed the corruption case he's embroiled in. His entire department, the National Unity Ministry, has been dissolved. However, Energy Minister Herman Halushenko, also the subject of corruption and mismanagement controversy, has been replaced but not removed, relocated instead to the Justice Ministry. This reshuffle is occurring in the midst of a lot of moving parts. There's the need to continue defending against Russia, while also preserving domestic life in the 4th year of war, while also navigating the ever-developing relationship with allies, particularly the United States and a NATO in flux. How these appointments will shape Ukraine's domestic policies and international relations remains to be seen, but they signal a desire on Zelensky's part to shake things up, although not bring in many new faces. At the Kyiv Independent, we're a reader-funded news outlet, meaning that shows like this are only made possible by viewers like you. If you'd like to join our community of more than 20,000 members, there will also be a link to our membership page in the description below. I'd also like to thank everyone who donates directly via YouTube. Your support is greatly appreciated. One of Ukraine's best-known anti-corruption activists, Vitaly Shabunin, has been accused of evading military service in a case that he claims is fabricated and motivated by his criticisms of powerful people within the Ukrainian government. Shabunin is the head of the Anti-Corruption Action Center, who has been a prominent member of Ukraine's civic society for more than 15 years. He voluntarily joined the Ukrainian army on the first day of the full-scale invasion, but has continued his activism in parallel to his military service since 2022. Throughout his career, Shabunin has been at the center of exposing multiple high-level corruption cases, has been open in his criticism of President Zelensky and his chief of staff, Andriy Yermak, and most recently has advocated against the controversy-mired and ineffective weapons procurement practices of the Defense Ministry, which stalled Ukraine's ability to scale its defense production in the face of full-scale war. The accusations against Shabunin stem from a 6-month period between September of 2022 and March of 2023, when he was given permission by his unit to travel from his base outside of Kyiv into the capital to perform work with the National Agency on Corruption Prevention. The charges made nearly 3 years later allege that Shabunin was doing work unrelated to his service during this period. thus evading his duties as a soldier. Authorities searched Shabunin's home and military unit, now stationed in Kharkiv Oblast, on July 11th. Other homes have also been searched by the State Bureau of Investigation in relation to this case, including the Kharkiv apartment of the mother of deceased pilot Juice, a posthumously awarded Hero of Ukraine who was a key advocate in the country's quest to acquire F-16 fighter jets. According to Shabunin, the search of his unit was done in violation of the Criminal Procedure Code, with the State Bureau of Investigation operatives focusing on filming the contents of the activist's phone. Shabunin believes that this was done to get data on members of the anti-corruption community that he has collaborated with, as well as to find material for future discreditation campaigns against him. Shabunin denies all accusations, and dozens of civil rights organizations, media outlets, and even military personnel have decried the charges as illegitimate and politically motivated. There are several important things to know here. Firstly, soldiers are sent on assignments outside of their units for a wide variety of reasons. Shabunin did not leave his unit during a time when his peers were sent on active combat deployment, and he says he did so following an order from his commander. We spoke with Shabunin this week, and he speculated that the accusations against him could serve to make him an example for two groups that threaten the political elite, who want to retain power throughout the war and beyond. First, Shabunin represents the activist community, particularly the vocal members who call out ongoing issues in the government. His arrest signals to them that anyone, however public, can be silenced. But Shabunin also represents a second group, the military. Over 1 million personnel are serving in Ukraine's defense forces, and according to Shabunin, most who joined in the chaos of the first few years of the war could similarly be found guilty of various crimes by the state. Protocol in the early days of the war was far from standardized across the military, and so was documentation. Most military records are kept on physical paper, meaning that a single lost document or contested detail from the early days of the full-scale invasion can lead to a conviction by the state today. This could be rolled out on a massive scale if the desire was there. For example, if the million-plus strong and growing military community was largely dissatisfied with what they see as injustice, especially ahead of an election. You can watch our full interview with Shabunin at the link in the bio below. Whenever our newsroom covers corruption in Ukraine or offers criticism of the government, there are inevitably those who say that we're playing into Russia's hands, that we're killing potential for foreign investment, that all manner of things are permissible by wartime leadership for the greater good. It is the job of independent media to report on threats to democracy, even when the picture revealed is unpleasant and contradicts the tidy narratives that we'd like to see. By painting a rosy picture of Ukraine that requires all manner of injustice to be swept under the rug in the name of image, we'd be doing a disservice to the defenders who are fighting and dying for this country's democratic future. For our member question this week, I'll be handing it over to my colleague to give me a hand in answering.
Hi, today we are answering a question from our member Troy. Russia recently made a point of slamming Lutsk, Lviv, Chernivtsi, all the farthest corners of Ukraine, but have they hit Zakarpattia at all, or are they intentionally treating it as part of Hungary? So it's true that Zakarpattia has arguably been the least targeted region during Russian attacks. Only a few missiles and drones entered its airspace in the past 3 years, generally without causing any real damage. And Zakarpattia was also not targeted in the latest wave of strikes against western regions. Though we can never know the reasons with certainty, we can guess why it's not the primary target for Russia. It's remote from the front line, without much of a heavy industry or military facilities, unlike some other western regions. Of course, we could argue that Russia might also be afraid to accidentally hit NATO territory, since Zakarpattia is lodged between Romania, Hungary, Slovakia and Poland. The issue with this argument is that Russia already showed it's willing to take the risk when it can hit some sensitive targets. For example, when its drones repeatedly crossed into Romania during attacks on Odessa Oblast ports.
That's all for this week. We'll be back next Sunday with more news from Ukraine. If you enjoyed this video, as much as anyone can enjoy this kind of news, please consider becoming a member of the Kyiv Independent community. It's truly thanks to viewers like you that we get to do this work, and we're so grateful for your support. Thanks for watching. I'll see you next week.